Well, this is not the usual apparatus that we have. We usually have this here, but it's being repaired. A 1928 Aaron's Fox pumper. That's the one that's, it should have been here. We putting this temporarily.
Okay.
These are buckets, that go back to the time when that's how they had to put them out.
Can you believe that?
This is with buckets. The two fires that are shown in those pictures, those are drawings, were from 1857 and 1858. And at that time, it was still volunteer. And it was because the volunteers really messed up that they decided Chicago had to have a professional firefighter.
Well, that does make sense.
And you know about the Chicago fire.
Yes, I heard about it, but please share.
That's the part that burned. It started up in where the orange is, and the wind was blowing this way. That's the part that burned of Chicago.
So wasn't there something with not enough pressure?
Oh well, that was. It started in back of that house.
Yeah, it was like a farm or something?
Well, it was a barn, and they still don't know how it's really started. But the wind was blowing this way. That's why the house didn't burn, because the wind was blowing in this direction, north. And yeah, that shows these are things that were burned, bricks that were burned in the fire, wood paving blocks that actually in the fire. Oh yeah, well these are pictures from this is how the downtown area looked after the fire. The only thing that operated were the horse-drawn trolleys.
Yes.
Yeah, the horse-drawn streetcars. Yeah, these are all pictures of buildings that burned during the fire. Well, it was a summer that had hardly any rain. There was almost no rain during that entire year, from April until the fire was in October.
Yeah.
And one of these buildings is the Chicago Tribune, the newspaper. The editor of the newspaper was not that smart. He had this building. This is the water tower that you still have today.
Yes, I remember that one. I've walked past it many times.
And I was just saying, the editor of the paper, they just built a new headquarters for the Chicago Tribune. There it is, right after the fire.
Yes.
That's all that.
With the yellow stone, it looks like some kind of stone.
Well, it is. It's. They call that, wait a minute, is it sandstone from Indiana?
Yeah.
They have that in Indiana. They brought it out. Anyway, so this newspaper editor was so smart, he thought he had a fireproof building. So he didn't have it insured. Yeah, brilliant mind. Anyway, it's fireproof. It's not going to burn.
Yeah.
Well, it's true. Some of the structures, the walls didn't, but everything inside did.
Yes.
That's you couldn't.
Yeah.
So, these were just some of the buildings that were destroyed, and one thing after another. It was so hot, and the wind was blowing so that we get our drinking water from the lake.
Yes.
And in order to keep it as pure as possible, they had what they called a crib out in the lake.
Yeah.
2 miles out, where there was a pipe that would go into the filtration plant.
Yes.
And so that the water would be more pure. And do you know that the wind carried the burning embers to that
Filtration
to
plant.
that to the no to where the intake was.
Oh,
which
yes.
was maintained by a couple out there. They had to they had to put their own fire out there in the middle in the lake, 2 miles out.
Yes.
Because the roof caught fire.
Oh, yes, 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 I read about that.
Of the embers that burned out there. So this guy you might remember, this Christopher Columbus, and the statue comes from it's left over from the World's Fair of 1893, which was called the Columbian Exposition.
Okay.
You know, they had a contest to see. They wanted to have a World's Fair to celebrate the 400th anniversary of Columbus's arrival in America. And Chicago was chosen to be the host city. And one of the reasons they call it the Windy City, it's not because of the wind off the lake. It was from the hot air from the politicians who convinced Washington that Chicago should be the host city because this is the greatest city in the blah 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 hot air.
Oh
That's
my
why they
God,
call
that's
it.
a funny
That's
story.
where that's where it gets the name, the Windy,
Windy
City.
City.
It's not the one.
I think only few people know this.
This helmet was worn by a fireman who became the commissioner, and he was a fireman for 61 years.
Wow.
That was his helmet.
So how old did he?
Well, he was 83 by the time he retired, but he was the commissioner though. See, in uniformed rank, you could only work in the uniform position until you were about 63.
Yes.
And then you either had to retire, or in this case, there was no commissioner. A commissioner was the sort of a political position that was above the uniform fire position. And so at the time he had to retire as a uniform fireman, there was no commissioner. It was the Depression, 1933, and 1937. It was still 1937, and the mayor was concerned. He wanted somebody he could rely on to run the department, and so he asked him to stay on temporarily
Yes.
as commissioner. Well, the
Temporary was
turned out
20
to
years?
18
18
years.
years.
So,
Oh, wow.
So he was, and that was he was the chief during a fire in the stockyards, which was in 1934. There was a terrible fire in the stockyards, and this is an allegorical picture,
Yes.
meaning it's not. He wasn't really doing that when they they drew him into the picture, and this wouldn't be here except we were ready to close here, almost ready to close.
Well, I'm glad you made the time for me.
These are all fine. Well, this thing is not really. This was a prop. There was an insurance company
Yes.
on the 12th floor of a building downtown Chicago, and this was used as a prop for this fire insurance company. Well, when they moved out of the building,
Yes.
this was still up there.
Yeah.
And you it was on the 12th floor, and you couldn't get this into an elevator.
No.
So they called us and they
Yes.
said, if you can take this apparatus apart,
Yes.
so that it can be brought down from the 12th floor, you can have it.
Oh.
So
And you
so that's
managed to and
that's
put
what
it
they
back
did.
together
They
again.
took- that's right. That's right.
Wow.
And I'm not sure it was ever used as a real engine. I think it was just a prop, but I'm not sure. We
Well,
can't-
what's underneath? That's
yeah,
the question,
well,
of
I
course.
guess there was a mo- yeah, there was a motor, yeah. So, and of course, we have the Chicago River, and there were a lot of grain elevators and lumber yards along the river. So at one point they had 5 fireboats here. At one point.
Yes.
Now we're down to just a couple of them. So that's why.
Yeah, well, it makes sense.
Yeah.
With the big lake,
Yeah, right.
immediate water.
Yeah, right.
Other than that, it will be just a matter of, and she is good.
This was a great tragedy back in 1958. I was in the newspaper. I worked for a newspaper at the time. This church school fire, which terrible mistakes were made. There was a church, and then there was a school that was operated by the church down the street, down the next street. And when the fire started in this church, in the school building, the nuns had to clear it with the head nun at the church, and then she had to call in the fire. And so it was confusing, and so the first fireman arrived at the church and went in, and there was no fire.
Yeah.
But the school was several buildings in the other, down the street.
Yes.
And so by the time they got there, it was already a mess, and
Thank you.
a lot of kids killed. There were 90.
Oh, that's so sad.
And this is 1958. So,
Oh, careful.
yeah, no, it's
She's on 55 getting off of California.
that was a map that was in the City Hall fire alarm office. And each of those dots represented a firehouse.
Yes.
And at one time there were 140. Well, if you include the boats, no, let's see, there were, well, about 140 firehouses. And each of those things would light up to indicate where the firehouse was. And then if they went out,
Yes.
they would be turning off the lights so that to remind the fire alarm operator
Oh, yeah.
that this engine 46 was out, so these other companies would, in case there was a fire in the same neighborhood, that they would know that they might have to go because the other one was out already.
Yes.
And so this was a system that they used for almost 100 years during the 1900s.
Yes.
It was improved over the years, but here's the idea: was you would call in on a telephone. Oh, and of course, before you had telephones,
Yes.
you had alarm boxes like this that would be on
Oh, that's an alarm box.
every two corners. And for instance, at night, if you were in a commercial area that was either offices or factories, and people were not living there, and you saw smoke coming, a fire, you couldn't run to there were no telephone. There weren't telephones.
Yeah,
They would have these on a street corner, and you would go and run and pull down the alarm, and then that would come in on a tape in the fire alarm office, and
in Pulaski,
and the tape would have a number on it, and there was a number attached to the fire alarm box,
Yes.
which would indicate.
charter schools over there near Lawndale or
47th Street too, another nightmare.
40, yeah, and that one ain't that, but
Just a second, I will show you.
Yes. So what year are we talking about?
It was 47. It seemed to move better, even at that time of the day.
So this is, and this would come in on a tape, 942, and these are the 4-engine pumpers would come,
Yes.
2 ladder trucks, rescue squad, high pressure wagon. This would register in each firehouse. And you can see they're almost every 2 blocks. For this was for engine 33, just for one engine company here, and so they would be that would be in their district, all those boxes. And so, and then if a firehouse was empty, you wanted to hook and ladder 9 would move into truck 10's house. See, truck 10 is going out on the first alarm. So on the second alarm,
No school in Keele. I went up Keele.
truck 9 would go to truck 10's house because that house was empty now. And engine 25 would move to engine 4. There's 4.
Certainly 51st.
And the 7 would fill in at 28. Engine 20, where's... Oh, that's truck 28. That's truck 28, yeah. So this is the way they filled in where there was empty firehouse.
62nd from Springfield all the way over to Artesian.
So what year are we talking about?
Well, this was from 19 by 1904 until 1996 they used this system.
Okay.
And I tell you something, it's more efficient than what they had. Yeah, this is what the kind of alarm they would, you'd pull that alarm and it would be
Seems like you can't wait.
register in the fire alarm office and then they would dispatch to these different, and then if you telephoned in, if you called in,
Yes.
the guy would answer the phone and you dial fire 1313 on the telephone, and the alarm operator would ask you to repeat the address to
Yes.
make sure he got the
The
correct
right one.
address, and then they would if it wasn't something major, it would only require one engine, maybe one ladder truck, and so he'd be standing at this console, and if it was for engine, see, this was engine 123's house.
That's easy to do.
So down would go the key to engine 123, and out the speaker it would come. Engine 123, you have a fire at such and such on 47th Street. And they would, from the time the call came in until the apparatus was on the street, 15 seconds. They'd press the alarm, they'd come down. If there was nighttime, they'd come down the pole. By the way, the fire pole was invented in Chicago.
Oh, it was?
Yes, in fact, it was by an African American fireman. Yeah,
Okay.
who happened to be up in the hayloft in the days of horse-driven, and he had this pole that was pushing the hay up into the loft, and rather than run down the stairs from, he was already women. I guess he must have been upstairs. Well, anyway, rather than run down the stairs, he used the pole to
go down? To slide down?
To slide down, and everybody thought that was funny. But then they realized he was getting down faster than everybody else, and so that's how
it
we
got invented.
And the first poles though were wooden, so they had to really sandpaper the.
Yeah.
Oh my God! It was. Then Boston produced the first brass pole, and ever since they've been brass. So they come down. That's how they speed away to the apparatus, and then the horses would be kept in the back. They would, when they pressed the alarm for at night time, they would release the harnesses of the doors of the stalls for the horses, and the horses would move up to the front of the house, and the harnesses would come down on top of the horses, and it would all be very, very fast. It was all set up.
That was
And,
organized.
oh yes. And that's the oldest house in the city from 1881. And it's still in service, that house. And when they widened the street in 1930, they widened that street and they cut off the front of the firehouse, but they added on to the back. You'd think they just tear down the front. No, they just cut off the front and added on the back, and it's still in service from 1881.
I need to check that one out.
That's the oldest firehouse in the city, and there are 3 still that are from the 19th century.
And which are the other two? Do you know?
Well, the other one is far on the west side, on North Waller Street. It's right near the city limit with Oak Park. And then the third one is over here on 39th
Where you wanna go, Pam?
and Ashland. Well, it's not too far away from here. It's the third oldest house from
Over the
1889,
expressway,
I think. Yeah, 88 or 89.
these other ways,
Anyway,
you stand
that's the
every
oldest
corner,
one.
all the way up Halsted Street,
Oh, yeah.
we won't get there.
Well, I think
Yeah.
I'm going to say thank you.
Okay.
Can I
Oh,
share who
well.
you are on the video?
Fromage.
Travis Slattery is fucking
Remember
going like
that?
crazy, and he's-
Cheese, right?
So how long have you been a firefighter?
Well, I was never a fireman. I was just a, what they call it, a fan. I just, as a kid, I just, was attracted to it.
I know the
got,
feeling.
interested in it.
Well, can I?
I worked for the Transit Authority, as a matter of fact. Yeah. So,
Well, thank you so
Jeff.
much.
Yeah, okay.
I'm going to do
Yeah, okay.
this. So you're Jeff?
Jeff, yeah.
Jeff. Well,
yeah.
I'm Lexi. Nice to
Okay,
meet you.
Lexi, nice to meet you.